Hello everyone, Joshua Smith of Apollo's Artifacts. It is April of 2019. Since this episode will focus on things that touch on other elements that are really important that are going on today related to Robert Mueller and the whole phenomenon of human sex trafficking and child pornography and so on, I thought that I would read this sort of into the record, as it were. It's an old article from an old AOL listserv that was put together by Catherine Dixon. How David Asimov, the biggest child porn processor in California, skated away from federal prison with a little help from his friends. David Asimov, son of the late science fiction writer Isaac Asimov, was sentenced on March 28, 2001 to 6 months home detention with electronic monitoring and 3 years federal probation for possessing child pornography. Now, this sounds very similar, of course, to the sweetheart deal that was given to Jeffrey Epstein that I've mentioned before in previous episodes, and lots of other people are finally starting to take note of. U.S. District Court Judge Maxine Chesney sentenced Asimov after reviewing a series of sealed psychiatric reports, one of which was ordered by the court. Asimov, who was charged with 4 federal counts of possession of child pornography, with each count carrying a 5-year sentence, pled guilty to 2 counts in a plea bargain deal. Very similar, again, to the Epstein case. There was no forfeiture of any of Asimov's assets in this case, despite his owning a home in Santa Rosa purchased in 1996 for $375,000, and despite his receiving $3,000 per month from his father's estate. How did Asimov, who possessed one of the largest stashes of pornography in California, skate away from federal prison? A look at the players yields the answer. Asimov's child porn stash was so big many child victims and perpetrators would have taken a fall had Asimov been zealously prosecuted at trial. Asimov would probably have escaped detection if he had not taken his personal computer to a store when its scanner and color printer malfunctioned. A technician working on the machine discovered images of children engaged in sexual acts with adults. A store supervisor contacted the police. Asimov's case is not the only case where tips about child porn were generated by store technicians. The police then raided Asimov's 4-bedroom home with a search warrant and discovered the largest child porn processing center ever discovered in the state of California. Quote, "There were thousands of discs, thousands of videos," said Sonoma County Deputy District Attorney Gary Medvigi, who personally referred to Asimov's home as a processing center for child pornography. Anything imaginable regarding sex between human beings and human beings, or human beings and animals, was there. Whatever your imagination could conjure up, he had it. It was like walking into a TV studio. Santa Rosa police seized scores of computer disks and approximately 4,000 video cassettes from Asimov's home, and approximately 1,000 of those videos contained child pornography. Medvigi said he had evidence to show Asimov distributed child pornography through the internet on at least a few occasions, which would constitute a felony. He said Asimov had 14 video machines arranged for high-speed editing and copying, and possessed cases of blank tapes. In addition to the videotapes and computer disk recovered, police reportedly found video cameras, several VCRs, and a costly tabletop scanner to create computer images. Quote, "He had a whole lot of editing and mass production capabilities," Santa Rosa police officer Zamudio said. "We were greeted by thousands of tapes, discs, periodicals, and commercial videos with covers showing child pornography. We spent 2 days collecting, packaging, and transporting all of the items." The case was passed from Sonoma County District Attorney J. Michael Mullins over to U.S. Attorney Robert Mueller. In March 1998, Asimov was arrested in Sonoma County and charged with 2 counts of felony exploitation of a child and possession of pornography. Asimov faced a maximum state penalty of 6 years. The identity of the child, whom Asimov allegedly exploited, was never revealed to the public. Parents nor associates of the child ever came forward. It is suspected that there was a secret settlement arrived at in the same fashion as the Michael Jackson case earlier. Asimov was arraigned in Sonoma County Municipal Court with bail set at $250,000. Asimov spent a few days in jail. His lawyer, Adrian, said that Asimov had the money to post bail but preferred to attempt to get out on his own recognizance. In fact, a few days later, Judge Frank Passalacqua released Asimov after having been told no local victims were identified in the porn seized from Asimov's home. Thus, within only a few days of his arrest, Asimov was released because the police happened to know no local victims were involved. How is it that they could have known this so fast? This is a very obvious question that anyone should raise. Why was this question not raised at the time? Asimov was thus ordered to be released on the mere condition that he stay away from children, computers, and the internet. Now, how exactly would something like this ever be enforced? This is the most absurd set of conditions I've ever heard outside of the Epstein conditions, where he could just freely come and go as he pleased. In July of 1998, before a preliminary hearing commenced which would have put the massive amount of evidence before the public, suddenly Sonoma County Deputy District Attorney Gary Medvigi announced the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco agreed to prosecute Asimov, 46, thus relieving Sonoma County of the prosecution. Sonoma Superior Court Judge Frank Passalacqua, quote, conditionally dismissed the 2 felony charges against Asimov relating to the distribution of child pornography. Passalacqua stated the charges were dismissed only so federal authorities could then file their case and would be reinstated in 30 days if for some reason federal authorities did not proceed. Medvigi tried to convince the public that the reason for the dismissal was that his office was limited in its ability to investigate the sources and possible distribution of the, quote, enormous amount of child pornography found in Asimov's home. Medvigi also cited the fact that much of Asimov's porn came from the internet and evolved out of state and international sources, which made it more appropriate for federal authorities to take over. At this point, J. Michael Mullins apparently wanted the public to believe that the federal government was going to do much more extensive prosecution of Asimov than Sonoma County authorities were able to do at the time. However, Asimov's attorney shed light on the true reason for the dismissal. Chris Adrian said he believed Sonoma County prosecutors handed the case to the feds because they had very weak evidence of any felony being committed. Skating away from prison was on Asimov's mind. Then it was up to U.S. Attorney Mueller to deliver a sweet plea bargain to Asimov. After having found thousands of images of child pornography in Asimov's processing center, District Attorney J. Michael Mullins washed his hands of the matter very carefully. The office and the Santa Rosa police made public statements that they had spent weeks analyzing the pornography to determine whether Asimov was involved in production or merely possessed it for his own personal gratification. In November of 1999, Asimov was then indicted by a federal grand jury on 4 counts of possessing images of child pornography. Because the grand jury transcript has never been released to the public cannot determine whether the evidence of distribution or sale of pornography was ever presented by the U.S. Attorney. We also do not know whether or not the grand jury ever saw all 1,000 videotapes of the horrendous child pornography found in Asimov's home or the images of bestiality that were mentioned earlier. We also do not know whether or not anyone ever attempted to identify the poor little children who were being abused in these films and photographs. Then, in December of 1999, Asimov pled not guilty in federal court and was again released. U.S. Attorney Mueller then engaged in a plea deal with Asimov and dropped 2 counts. This put Asimov and his defense team very close to obtaining a sentence which would not involve any state prison time nor forfeiture of his assets. And once again, the public will never know what all went on with this case because everything related to it, all of the reports, all of the documents, everything is sealed away. Judge Chesney, who also presided over one component of the case, was nominated to the court by Senator Dianne Feinstein. And of course, it's Feinstein who had the Chinese Communist spy as her limousine driver for about 20 years. Another key detail is that Asimov's lawyer, Chris Adrian, is known for representing child molesters all throughout Northern California. So he made the case to the court of Judge Chesney that, well, my client Asimov, he just has a bit of a psychiatric issue here. So the only thing Judge Chesney does, remember the one appointed by Feinstein, said that basically he just needed to get a little bit of counseling and everything will be fine. And so what that brings us to is that the U.S. Attorney Robert Mueller, District Attorney J. Michael Mullins, the Santa Rosa Police, the FBI, U.S. District Court Judge Maxine Chesney, all taught Mr. Asimov his lesson. They also taught a lesson to the children depicted in Asimov's 1,000 videotapes who suffered during the making of these brutal sexual exploitation films. These children, unlike Asimov, will not be able to put this matter behind them. Their fate, if they are even still alive, makes Asimov's 6-month sentence of sitting at his home with an electronic monitoring bracelet on his ankle look like a day at the beach, or perhaps a day with Jeffrey Epstein. And the reason that I'm covering so many of these cases lately is because a lot of it has come up as I was researching the McMartin trial case and as I'm going into the Omaha Boys Town case for the next episode of the Satanic Panic related material. Really what we see is a through line, a series of connections between all of these cases where the public likes to say so much about how they abhor the mistreatment of children, but again and again and again, what we actually see is when there is real maltreatment of children, people get a mere slap on the wrist, or they get no punishment at all, or everything just gets deflected and delayed, and charges are dropped and dismissed all over the place. I mean, it's just an absolute shame. It's a complete tragedy for the way that these things are being dealt with and have been dealt with for 30 or 40 years now. And there are very deep socio-political reasons for this. Some of it are also historical reasons, which I will trace out sometime in the future, that are related to Alfred Kinsey and going back further related to Sigmund Freud. However, those issues are a bit beyond the scope of the current episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.